Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a very beautiful early tank engine by Bachmann. Today then I am of course looking at this, Bachmann's Johnson 1P044 tank engine. And here's something quite scary for you. This year, this model is 5 years old, which is terrifying to me. When I think about this model, I think of it as being brand new, released within the past year or two, not 5 years old. But yeah, 2020 was when this model first launched. Can't believe it's been that long. But anyway, more recently, Bachmann have brought this model back. It is now in their current range. There's a few versions of this model available to buy right now in perhaps some of the more plain liveries. But there's also a whole big range of these that you can pre-order as well, and this includes the very illustrious pre-grouping Midland Railway livery, which, if you couldn't guess, is my favourite. So the model's 5 years old this year, it's back in Bachmann's range. I thought what better time to take a fresh look at this model to see what this is like. I remember 5 years ago it was a very good model indeed, but of course 5 years have passed now, standards have improved. Is this still worth picking up? We're going to find out. Now, I wrote down the prices of this model for 2020 when I first bought mine. So the RRP back then was £149.95, so about 150 quid, and I paid £127.45 for mine. The prices now, 5 years on, have gone up. The full RRP is £174.95, with the retailer price being about the same as the old RRP, so £148.70. So clearly the prices have gone up for this model, which is a shame. But of course, over those 5 years, there has been some inflation. And actually, if I take the old price and adjust it for inflation, it comes out at £158.95, which is £10 more than the price actually is now for these. So adjusting for inflation, the price of this model has actually gone down by £10, which is fantastic to see. A lot of the time I talk about models that have gone up in price beyond the rate of inflation, but this is a model that has not, which is fantastic. And yes, inflation is just an average, of course, but it's interesting that some manufacturers tend to gravitate towards being above the rate of inflation and others below. So it's not very often that I compliment Bachmann on their pricing, but in this case, well done Bachmann. It's great to see prices coming down a little bit. Having said that, this is still £150 now. That's quite a lot for a tank engine, so obviously there should be some high expectations for this model. So let's take a look at this thing today. If you'd like to browse the range or perhaps pick one up for yourself, I will pop an affiliate link down in the description. But for now, Bachmann's Johnson 1P, let's take a look. Alright, the Midland Railway. So there's not a whole lot of choice of Midland Railway stuff at the moment. There's a few locos, there's this, I believe Bachmann do a Midland 1F, so Midland Freight locomotive. There is of course the Hornby and Bachmann compounds as well, plus the Hatton's Genesis coaches. But right now is a pretty good time for Midland Railway modelers because we've got Rapido's 440 on the way. That's going to be really good. And of course there's the Rapido Evolution coaches in the Midland livery, which are going to be available soon. So yeah, the amount of Midland Railway stuff available is about to grow quite substantially. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the one I've got is 31-740. It's the Midland Railway 1532 class. That's also what it's known as. Number 1273 in the Midland Railway Crimson Lake. Gorgeous livery this. And it's DCC ready with an next 18-pin DCC socket. And if you're interested in the prototype, I'll show you the back of the box. There's a brief history of it right there, although I will give you a little potted history in just a second. For now though, it's been a long while since I've looked at this model properly, so let's pop this out of its box and let's see exactly what you get. As you can see, very sensibly sized packaging here, and a beautifully sized locomotive. Very, very cute in proportions, I think. And I do love 044 tank engines. Not a whole lot of those available, but each of them is gorgeous. There's the Hornby H-Class, so we've got the Rapido Metropolitan loco. We've got the M7 from Hornby. Did I already say that? I don't know. But anyway, this is another one of them. We do have some instructions in the box, so I guess we'll start with those. So I think this is what we want. So this is the Midland Railway 15321P tank. Locomotive information, so this does have a coreless motor in it, so nice and modern actually. As we said, next 18-pin DCC decoder. It does have a factory fitted speaker, that's really good, and it's got electrical pickup on all wheels. That's also very useful for this wheel configuration. All sorts of different accessories, as you can see. We've got steam heat pipes, screw link couplings, great inclusion that, cab steps, cab doors, and a blanking plate for DCC sound versions. Diagrams, of course, to show you where the various parts go, again very useful. Running in, it is going to be necessary to run this in, but I've already done that with mine, so that's all good. Lubrication, very simple lubrication points, the axles, the crank pins. Changing wheel sets and traction tyres. So this loco comes with metal tyred wheels pre-fitted, but there is a set of optional wheels that comes with the model with rubber tyres on them, so that if you want your loco to haul a bit more, if you want to improve its traction, you can fit those tyres if you'd like to. And this just tells you how to do that. Personally, I'm going to be sticking with the metal tyres because I don't like traction tyres, but it's marvellous to have the choice, isn't it? DCC decoder fitting, this shows you how to remove the body, which is held on with screws, and there's a little look at the chassis on the inside, and there's the DCC socket just in front of the motor there. And on the back, we've got firebox, glow and flicker. I couldn't remember whether this loco had that feature, but it does. So there we go. On analog, the lights just come on steady, but on DCC with a decoder fitted, they will flicker, which is fantastic. So there we go, very, very good instructions covering all bases. Product maintenance and care, I think that's just generic, and that's the Collectors Club. Right, so let's take a look at the accessories then, which are here on the top. So let's have a little look at these. So as you can see here, we've got the set of metal wheels with the traction tyres fitted. I did test this model with those once upon a time. Yes, it's more powerful with those. Then we've got the painted cab doors, which look wonderful with the lining on them. We do have the articulating screw link couplings, which is great to see, and various other steps and other details as well. So lots that you can add to the model if you want. Right. Let's have a look at the engine then. What is the finish like? Again, can't really remember. Oh, yes. Yeah, it's lovely. Beautiful. Hopefully the camera picks that up. Beautiful bit of shine on the boiler there. Yeah, it's a really luxurious finish, which of course it needs because the Midland livery is luxurious itself. So yeah, beautiful. Let's lift this up then. What's the weight like? All right. So I would say it's not bad. Obviously, it's not a massive engine, so it's not going to weigh a ton. But I would say, considering how sort of slim it looks, it is reasonably heavy, actually. And there's a fair bit of metal construction on this as well. The boiler and tanks and such, these are just plastic, unfortunately, but the running plate, at least, that's metal, that's die-cast, so that feels quality, actually, in the hands. It makes the model feel a bit sturdier, nice cold feeling of metal on your fingers, which of course I like, and the chassis on the inside, presumably, is going to be metal as well. So yeah, it's a really lovely looking model. This is my favourite livery on these locos. I've looked at lots of listings of the plainer black liveries, which are lovely, and of course they're going to be very useful to people who don't want to model the Midland livery version of this. But I'm not too bothered about modelling realistically. I'm more interested in pretty liveries. So for me, this is the perfect choice, and how beautiful this is. So we'll take a much closer look at this model in just a second. I'll talk about its details, its features and the quality, etc. But for now, let's have a bit of background on the prototype in real life. Also known as the Midland Railway 1532 class, the Johnson 1P consisted of 65 044 tank engines built by Samuel W. Johnson between 1881 and 1886. The class was constructed at Derby Works and it shared many components with previous designs, such as the Type C boiler from the older Class 1252 and 6 class. With a tractive effort in the region of 69 kilonewtons, nice, they were soon outperformed by other 044 designs, such as the later SEC/H class, as I've just mentioned, or the LSWR M7 class, to name just a few produced in 00 scale. Nevertheless, the design remained in service for an incredible 75 years. All but 3 examples survived into the LMS period following the 1923 grouping, one of which was transferred to the S and DJR, and Bachmann did produce that, I think, back in the day for their collectors club. Although withdrawal began back in 1919, the final example was not removed from service until 1956, meaning that the class, at least in some form, did survive into the British Railways period, again useful for modellers. Regretfully though, all examples were scrapped with no survivors today. So there she is, up close and personal for you, Bachmann's absolutely gorgeous Midland 1P. Yeah, this is a cracking model. I like everything about this. As you can probably tell, the livery is just marvellous. Bachmann, of course, is the king when it comes to paint jobs, and this is a great example. But besides the paint jobs, the level of detail is amazing. There's loads of detail variations within this tooling as well. Looking at some of the other listings, there's different types of safety valve. We've got this version here, which is the sort of bonnet cone looking thing. There's also versions of this model with more traditional separate safety valves, different smoke boxes, some with the smoke box dart, some without. So it's a comprehensive tooling which ensures that every version of this Bachmann makes is accurate to the prototype, which is fantastic. It's also a very good quality model in that everything is nice and straight, it's well fitted. Like I say, there's lots of metal on board, making the model reasonably heavy. In fact, it weighs in at 194 grams, which is more than Rapido's E-Class, to name another 044. It's even more than Hornby's M7, which is quite a large 044, yet this thing is heavier than it, so that's really impressive. Anyway, let's jump in and talk about the decoration. Believe it or not, this is not the most illustrious version of this model now. It was when I bought it, but some of the other newly announced versions of this have even more lining on them than mine does. But nevertheless, this is beautifully presented. The finish, like I say, is marvellous. Bachmann absolutely nailing the sort of satin sheen to this model here, which looks grand. Noticeably, the finish of the smoke box is the same as the boiler, which isn't that realistic. This is something I like to point out these days. And looking at the listings on the latest versions of these models, doesn't look as though that issue has been addressed, although maybe it will have been when they finally come into stock. But yeah, overall finish fantastic. Loads of lining on this. We've got lining around the tanks. As you can see, we've got the Midland Railway lettering, which is beautifully applied, as is the number between the 2 letters there. The splashes are lined too, as you can see. The wheels are beautifully presented. They are blackened, which makes them look good, and so are the axles, so the axles don't stand out too much. Plus we've got the lining around the wheels as well, which I think on every single wheel actually is done faultlessly, which is not always the case, so that's great. The side of the cab, as you can see, the tiny little cab walls, these have been intricately lined. The side of the coal bunker, this is lined as well, and we've got a little builder's plate on there, although no separately etched version of that was provided. That is just a print. The smoke box door has the running number printed onto it as well, so loads and loads of decoration here. The buffers are very intricately painted with a bit of lining on the ends of the buffer housings there, and the buffer beams themselves are fully painted up as well with lining and also the Midland Railway lettering on there. It is a tremendously beautiful paint job, in fact one of my favourites. Just love this. Right, let's jump into the level of detail then. So we've got interesting brake rigging on this locomotive, which is very prominent. Many of the brake rods are sort of outside of the wheels so that you can see them, so that's interesting. We've got separately fitted pipework behind there, which is painted, so it stands out beautifully. That looks really, really good. And there's quite a bit of pipework on here as well. We've got a bit more on the boiler here. It's a damn good paint finish on the pipework. We've got a real distinction between the copper and the brass sections, which is great to see. Very realistic, that. And over on the other side, we've got some pipework and associated components. I would swear that some of these are made of metal, but they're not, they're plastic, they're just very, very well painted. And there's little valves on the side of the smoke box, for example. We've got chrome finished handrails, which are also metal and made of wire. So that goes for the side of the smoke box and boiler, and also the front of the tanks, little separately fitted parts there. The running plate is very nicely detailed as well. You can tell this is a relatively new tooled model because all of the rivets, despite these parts being die cast, are really nice and clean and crisp, which is great. Lamp brackets, very straightly applied to the running plate there, that's marvellous. We've got metal buffers with a great finish to them, and these are sprung. Yeah, really premium model this. Obviously, if you want to fit the coupling hook with the screw link coupling to the buffer beam, you can do, but the vacuum pipes are pre-fitted, as you can see. Between the frames, we even have some detail. There's a little representation there of the valve gear between the frames. Great to see something between the frames here rather than just a plain empty space. That's really nice to see. Then the chimney is a separately fitted part, but it's got a decent fit to the smoke box, which is good. Similarly, the dome here is a really good fit. You can clearly see that this is not a peg which fits into a hole in the boiler, which is not realistic. As per the prototype, it just looks like the dome is sitting on top of the boiler where it's been fixed there, and that looks exactly as it should, in my opinion. We've got these little valves here which do have a sort of painted finish, but I think they could be turned metal parts. They feel quite cold to the touch and very sturdy, so yeah, they might be metal. Like I say though, painted finish and the quality of the paint on these parts is just fantastic. It's very, very convincing, isn't it? Similar sort of thing with the safety valve bonnet as well. This is a plastic part and it has a kind of painted finish rather than an electroplated finish. I still think electroplating looks better than this, but I have to say this is the next best thing. This has been done a lot better than I've seen from other manufacturers. The quality of the paint here is very, very convincing, and like I say, very close to being a metallic finish that. Same with the whistle. Nice molded plastic piece this with good quality paint. Makes a big difference, I reckon. Anyway, here are the glazed windows, which are nice and flush to the outside of the cab, and we've got lining around those windows too. Around the back, we've got more flush glazing with the bars over the windows. These are not separately fitted bars, as we've seen on some models, which is a shame. I suppose that would have looked a little better if they were separate parts. They would have stood out more, perhaps, but it's not a bad effect, that. On the inside of the cab, though, you can see that the glazing pieces are not individual, and we've got these relatively chunky glazing parts spreading between the windows, which isn't that realistic on a model that otherwise is very, very refined. It's particularly noticeable on the front. Yeah, it stands out quite a lot, that, and it spoils the cab a little bit because otherwise the cab is absolutely incredible. We've got loads of separately fitted parts, beautifully painted, again with that high quality paint. Controls, pipework, really, really nicely done. And even the illuminated firebox, of course, which hopefully we'll see working soon. So yeah, individually glazed windows I think would have looked a lot better. Otherwise, yeah, the cab's marvellous. The cab roof is fairly basic. Yeah, the moulding of the cab vent on the top here isn't great. It's very clear that that's just kind of moulded. That, to me, doesn't sell the illusion of a sliding vent. And of course, it doesn't really slide. You can't pose the vent, unfortunately. So that's another thing that maybe could have been a little better. The handrails on the side of the cab, these are not separately fitted, and I think these are a part of the moulding, which I don't have a problem with per se. You know, they look dimensionally to be okay. But of course, moulding them as opposed to separately fitting them makes them a little harder to paint, as evidenced by the fact that the paint doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the parts. So yeah, I think they would have looked better if they were separately fitted. So one or two cost-saving measures around the cab, really. Then around the back, we've got the coal load, which doesn't fill the coal bunker to the top. That's really convenient if you want to add your own coal load. You could just pop it on the top and that won't spoil the realism. We've got the little moulded coal guard around the top, which is pretty good. Yeah, it's a nice looking part, that. And around the back, we've got separately fitted lamp brackets, which are very, very straightly applied. That's great to see. Similarly detailed buffer beam and a NEM tension lock coupling pre-fitted to the bogie. The rear NEM pocket is fitted directly to the bogie. And this does come with a front coupling as well, which you can fit down here. I personally don't bother with that because I prefer the way the front of the engine looks without that coupling, but you can keep it there if you want. So on the whole, this is an absolutely incredible model. The level of detail is marvellous, and generally speaking, it's a very, very finessed model. The issues I have with this thing are very nitpicky and minor indeed. They would be some of the fidelity of the detail around the cab and possibly the finish of the smoke box. Very minor things, and on the grand scheme of things, they don't amount to very much at all, but they are at least worth mentioning. Anyway, that's the way the loco looks. Absolutely gorgeous. What a good job Bachmann have done. And I can only imagine what the new release of this model is going to look like. Like I say, some of them have much more lining than this one does even. And I think that's going to look great. But this one looks fantastic too. Let's get it down onto the track. Let's talk mechanism, and let's also see how this thing runs. So there she is, Bachmann's Johnson 1P down onto the track. How beautiful is this thing? Honestly, if I had to consume one loco in my collection, it would be this one. Although maybe that's a lie, perhaps I'd choose something smaller so that I reduce my chance of immediate death. But I don't know why I'm talking about that. What I should be talking about is the mechanism and performance. So I've just been warming this loco up, so she's nice and warm, and I'll show you how she runs in just a second. I've also just taken this thing apart to look at the mechanism, and that's what I'm going to fill you in on now. And the good news is that this loco is still bang up to date. 5 years ago when this thing was launched, it was brand new. Bachmann did put all of the bells and whistles into it, and I think that was a really good move because now, 5 years on, it still meets modern standards absolutely perfectly. So, pickups wise, this does indeed have all-wheel pickup, which is great for an 044. So tiny little wiper pickups on its bogie wheels, slightly larger, more robust pickups on its driving wheels. From the factory, no rubber tyres are fitted to this model. Those are the optional extra, so we do have all wheels picking up properly from the factory. Obviously, if you did add the rubber tyres, then you would have to sacrifice one set of pickups on the relevant driving wheels, so keep that in mind. So the base keeper plate is held on with 3 screws, plus the screw that holds the NEM pocket, and then, as I discovered, plus another screw beneath the NEM pocket, so that's, 5 screws. Once those 5 screws were out though, the base keeper with the pickups on it was fully removable, which is great for servicing. Of course, that gives you great access to the pickups and to the axles, and also it means exchanging the wheels for rubber traction tired wheels is a lot easier as well, if that's a route you choose to go down. You can also see we've got proper separate bearings on the driving axles, fantastic quality from Bachmann, and a nice simple drive with just one axle driven, that's the rearmost axle. So for body removal, I've left the NEM pocket off and also the screw beneath the NEM pocket, because that's a body screw. 2 more screws at the back, and the body is quite easily removable, so a very serviceable model this. And this is a brilliantly designed chassis, as you can see. Die-cast, fair bit of weight to this. We've got a coreless motor here, which is great quality. Long-lasting, these coreless motors as well, so a good choice. No flywheel fitted to this though, which is a shame. We do have the next 18-pin DCC socket on board, so again, bang up to date, nice and modern, loads of decoders available for this thing. Here are the LEDs, as you can see there's 2 of them for the firebox, and on DCC both of these will work and flicker, which is great. And yes, there is even a pre-fitted speaker in this model, which is fantastic to see. So it's sound ready, all you need is the right decoder and this will make some noise, that's great too. Then the gauging came in at between 14.2 to 14.3 millimeters, which is just comfortably below the standard, and that's typically where most locos are gauged, so no problem with that. Wow, what a quality mechanism this is. And do you know, that price tag suddenly seems so much more worth it, because this loco is marvellous on the outside, but it's not hiding a bogey or a turd on the inside. It's just as good on the inside as it is on the outside, and for me, that more or less makes this worth the money. Anyway, what is the performance like then? As I say, I've been warming this up a little bit just to make sure it's up to speed. So, as you can see, off she goes. And I think you can tell she's quite lively. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment when I run this past you at half power. But as you can see, yeah, she can do a nice sort of smooth, slow speed. I've just moved her coaches back. I'll run by at half power then. Are you ready? It's quite extreme. Here we go. So yeah, for half speed, I would say this is quite quick. And I suspect the reason is it's the coreless motor. Coreless motors tend to run quite quick. Bachmann that's full speed. Goodness me. Bachmann really at this point in 2020 hadn't fitted that many locos with coreless motors, and so I think they really needed to adjust their gearing from their standard motor gearing to reflect the much higher speed of the coreless motor, because in real life I believe the top speed of these locos was about 65 to 70 miles an hour, so it's not that quick. And I have to say, even at half power, it seems to be going about that scale speed. What do you think? That doesn't seem far off 65 miles an hour, does it? So yeah, perhaps slightly better gearing would have improved this, but what is the slow speed like? Can this crawl? Because if it can, then the high speed won't be a problem. Let's see. Yep. It certainly can. Turning up a little bit more. Yeah, that's really, really reliable actually. It's not stopping. It does seem to be speeding up. I'm not turning it up now. There we go. I wonder if I can slow it down a bit then. Oh, no, it's done it by itself. So yeah, maybe it's not the most consistent in the world. I bet there's not much torque there. Yeah, no, that's stopped dead. So yeah, slightly better gearing might have made this a better crawler, but it's pretty darn good, I would say. Ooh. Reverse. Yeah, tiny bit jerky, but there's certainly enough control here to do most tasks, I would say. You know, backing up to freight or coaches in this case, you're going to be able to do that with plenty of control. So yeah, that's great. Is there torque at the higher speeds? I should think so, knowing a coreless motor. Here we go, 50%, yeah. Almost as though there was nothing there at all. So lots of torque, like I say, great motors those. Very, very efficient, low power draw as well. Not that you're that concerned about your electricity bill caused by model trains, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's a genuinely beautiful runner. Really lovely this. Right. So pulling power then, it's actually not too bad without the traction tyres. Thanks to the loco's weight, it comes in at 0.18 newtons, which is about 14 standard coaches on straight and level track. That's really not too bad. Of course though, that's not the end of the story. If you wanted to fit the rubber traction tyres, you could do, and that would make the total number of coaches 45, which is absolutely insane. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend fitting the traction tyres because obviously it's a pain and you lose a set of pickups, so you sacrifice a bit of your reliability. But if you've got a layout with extreme gradients, let's say, or very tight curves, or a combination of both, then yeah, the traction tyres might be something for you. Maybe also if you use lots of old rolling stock, perhaps kit-built rolling stock that's not as free rolling as your Rapido wagons with their bearings and such, maybe then you might need to fit the traction tyres. They're certainly not for me, but that's an option. So to test the haulage of this loco, I've set up these Hatton's Genesis coaches, which are not in a Midland Railway livery. These are the SECR liveried coaches, so not strictly correct of course, but they do kind of match in colour, and I wanted to try and find something that I've not run with this 1P before. So with that, let's back up to the Genesis coaches and let's try a coupling. Here we go. Toot toot. Okay, take it steady. Yeah, a little bit tricky to control at the slow speeds, but with patience, it'll do it. Right, the coaches are moving backwards, but it doesn't look like it's gone close enough. Did I manage to... oh no, I did it. I was going to say, did I manage to Robin Hood the coupling hooks there? Did they touch each other head on? I don't know, I couldn't see from my angle. You guys will know though. Anyway, anything else to mention before we start? Oh yeah, there is the firebox flicker effect, which on analog is not a flicker effect. The red light just comes on steady there, but apparently on DCC these lights do flicker. So yeah, that works, another great feature. Right, so in order for this to look realistic, I think I'm going to have to run this at quite a bit below half speed. So I'm going to try it at 30. Gentle start, and that's 30. Yeah, I think that's plenty, isn't it? So today's theme is going to be 044 locomotives, so keep an eye on the sidings, see which ones you can spot, and there is an odd one out, so comment down below if you see what that is. I was saying not too long ago that I needed to run this loco on the middle line more often, And this is the Hornby H-Class, and in an 044 session, this is the perfect choice. So there she is, she's gotten her wish, running again on video with the Bachmann birdcage coaches, which I love. So there those go. And then another 044 tank that I didn't have when the Johnson 1P was first released is the Rapido E-Class. This is the Metropolitan livery, or is it London Transport? I forget now. Yeah, it's Metropolitan, with just a couple of matching coloured coaches. Right, so because of the suboptimal gearing, I've had to turn the controller down quite a bit, so there's not much power going to the loco. Quite curious to see how that's affecting things. By the looks of it, not at all. I did not see it slow down on those curves, which is so impressive, because 30% power is not a lot. Usually I run a loco in a review at 50% power, which is much higher of course, and yet this loco did not slow down on those curves. That tells me that this loco is very efficient. Yet again, I suspect that's probably because of that coreless motor. Very efficient motors those, they don't use much power at all, and yet they output plenty of torque, very efficient. So a beautiful runner. I do wish this was geared slightly better, because I can only imagine how incredibly this would run if it was geared to run just a touch slower. But really, even as it is, there's not much scope for complaint here. You know, this is a beautiful runner, quite a lot better than most, possibly the best 044 in the collection. Metropolitan E-Class, that's pretty close, that's very good as well. I don't know though, this one seems particularly reliable, particularly good. Yeah, could well be this one. But anyway, a beautiful loco. It absolutely shines in every area, doesn't it? Detail, mechanism, performance, even price, you know? It's an expensive model for sure, but you do get what you pay for, and like I often say, I don't mind high prices if the models are worth it. If they're built to the right standard, if they've got all the features that they should have, then high prices are not by themselves too much of a bad thing. And yep, I would say this loco's worth it. So there you have it, folks. The Johnson 1P by Bachmann. What a stunner she is. And now for some ratings on Bachmann's Midland Railway 1532 class. So level of detail, to answer the question from the start, does this loco still meet modern standards? Yes, it does. It's an absolutely marvellous loco. The decoration is gorgeous, fantastic, fantastic paint job. Loads of detail, all produced really nicely, perfectly fitted. We've got the screw-link couplings for the buffer beams, we've got sprung buffers, we've got lights in the cab, loads of painted cab detail too, variations among the different versions of the model. Amazing. It doesn't get 5-star because the smoke box doesn't have a matte finish. That's something that could potentially have been added, and some of the cab details were lacking in finesse, whether that be the glazed windows, the vents on top of the cab, or the handrails around the doors. Room for improvement there, but only very, very minor room for improvement, so 4.5 star it is. Performance, I've given the same score, 4.5 stars. It's perfectly reliable, particularly without the traction tyres fitted. No stuttering on points, that's brilliant. Nice constant speed around the layout, that's good to see. Nice and smooth as well. On the downside though, it is a little bit quick. The top speed of these locos wasn't that high at all because of how early they were, and yet this loco at its full speed really does race along. And while the crawl's not too bad, I have seen better. It does kind of struggle at the very slowest speeds. I think it's because this loco runs a coreless motor. Coreless motors generally have a higher RPM than traditional 3 or 5 pole motors. Perhaps that could have been better accounted for with the gearing. But it's not too bad. The loco can run at a relatively slow speed nice and smoothly, so I've only knocked off 0.5 star. Power then, the tractive effort comes in at 0.18 newtons, which is about 14 coaches on straight and level track. If you were to fit the traction tyres though, you would, well, what is it, triple? I don't know. You would massively increase the tractive effort. So if you want this thing to haul a little bit more, or a lot more as it is, fit the tyres, then it can haul around 45 coaches. There are some disadvantages to that, of course. You will lose a set of pickups, and you'll also be making the motor more vulnerable to overloading. Obviously, that's a lot more coaches for that little coreless motor to be hauling. So it's not something I'd recommend, but if you do find that your layout causes this loco loco to wheel slip too much with the loads you want to haul, you do have an option, and it's a perfectly fine option to fit those traction tyres just to get a little boost out of the tractive effort. Obviously though, don't be coupling this thing up to 30 or 40 coaches, that's not a good idea. Mechanism then, again I've given 4.5 star. This is so close to having the perfect score for mechanism. It's so beautifully designed. All-wheel pickup, we don't have to have the traction tyres, which is a great option to have. I love being given the choice. Very serviceable, easy to get the base off, easy to get the body off. Quality cordless motor, doesn't have a flywheel unfortunately, although that's the only thing I can really knock this for. It does have the next 18-pin DCC socket, so that's nice and modern. It's got full lighting inside the firebox, and it's even got a pre-fitted speaker. What more could you ask for, apart from a flywheel? I don't think anything, so 4.5 star, super good. All things considered, the quality I've given 5 star. Now perhaps the handrails around the cab, maybe they could have dragged the score down a bit, but I think, like I say, considering everything, 5 star is deserved. Perfect decoration, really good build quality on this, no visible glue, no wonky parts, fair bit of metal in both the chassis and the running plate. Perhaps the boiler and smoke box could have been metal to improve the weight, but the weight's still much better, I would say, than a lot of other 044 tank engines on the market, so I'm not going to complain about that. Yeah, it's a marvellous quality model. Yes, it's expensive, but you do get what you pay for, which is great. And that brings us on to value for money then. So RRP £174.95, clearly that is an awful lot of money. And when you look at this model, you might think, blimey, that's very expensive. And yes, it is, you know, sure, it's a lot of money. At the retailers, things are a little better, £148.70. Clearly though, that's still a lot. But looking at what you actually get here, looking at the detail, looking at the quality and the features, the lights, the speakers, the sprung buffers, the accessories, you do get an awful lot for your money here. Plus, accounting for inflation, the model is about £10 cheaper than it was 5 years ago on launch. So unusually for Bachmann, I'm going to say I'm quite pleasantly surprised by the latest prices of these models. So I've given it 4 star. It's not a bargain or anything, but I think for what you get, the price is more than fair. Overall then, that is a score of 8.88 out of 10, or a grade of A. So yeah, this loco still got it, and it's still something I think I could recommend, even at the typical retailer price really. 150 quid for this, yeah, there's worse value out there than that. And into the logbook this goes, where it's done really well actually. 2nd place above the Rapido Sterling single and below the P-Class. Yeah, gorgeous loco. So impressed that this holds up against 2025 models as well as it does. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for this review. Thank you so much for tuning into this one, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this loco. I'm so glad I've done a new review of this thing because it's such an enjoyable model. And 5 years was enough time for me to more or less forget just how enjoyable this thing is. So I've thoroughly enjoyed going over it with a fine-tooth comb, rediscovering everything about it. Yeah, what a glorious model this is. So feel free to check out the latest range of these. Like I say, there's a lot more choice now with these locos than there was 5 years ago. More new liveries, more different variations. Yeah, it's a very good time to pick up one of these if it's something you're interested in. So if you are, feel free to check out the affiliate link down in the description, and if you decide to go with one, please do leave me a comment, let me know what you think about it when it comes, and if you've got general thoughts to share on this model, then please do that as well. But for now, I'll say thank you ever so much for watching once again, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.